Hey everyone, it's Lawrence here from StudioHawk, and today we're going to be tackling the question, is WordPress or Shopify better for SEO? I saw this question trending online and it actually spiked up in keyword searches recently, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I'd love to give my take on, essentially, is one better than the other, which is a really, really good question that some of our clients ask when they're selecting platforms, or even when I initially talk to them, they're like, is Shopify good? Like, is it good for SEO? And that question, we're going to run through it today. It's a pretty meaty one. So to give a quick overview on Shopify, it's a e-commerce platform. It's one of the most popular and it's used by a lot of big brands here in Australia. I know a few big brands like JB Hi-Fi use it, and it's a really efficient platform for hosting essentially products on your store. It's a really easy to use CMS. It's quite flexible as well. And I can even show you a quick example of how a Shopify build would look online. And for any keen on SEO, if you've been working with SEO for a while, you can generally tell which websites are hosted on which platform. So looking through, this is a website I found recommended as one of the top websites currently hosted on Shopify. Really, really clean. Really, really clean setup. It's got all the categories you need. It's got all the visuals. This is a really nice build for a Shopify website. If you go into one of the category pages, it's set out really nicely. I would really enjoy the shopping experience if I was on this website. So in terms of Shopify, it is only an e-commerce platform. That's what I would really recommend it for. And it's really useful in terms of launching a store really quickly. WordPress. Now WordPress, well, our website's actually hosted on WordPress. It's one of the most popular platforms. It's existed for so long in terms of hosting websites. It's quite customizable as well. It's open source, and there's a lot of major websites are actually hosted on it as well. One I found is vogue.com.au, or Vogue just in general. It's actually hosted on WordPress, which is I found quite surprising. Even I think New York Times, news.com.au, some really major website publications online still use WordPress because it's a really great platform for hosting content online. So looking through, it's actually astounding to me that a website or a brand as popular as Vogue can still get such a clean setup and such a well-designed and well-thought-out website just using WordPress. So, credit to all those developers out there who are working on this website for being able to really push WordPress to its full potential. That being said, still a really basic setup. You can start hosting a website on WordPress really quickly, slap on a theme, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, with this whole question around is one better than the other, it really depends on what you're doing, which we'll get into a little bit later, but I wanted to quickfire a couple of the differences between the platforms to give you a scope on how everything would look if you're choosing a platform between Shopify, WordPress, and looking through the differences in terms of budget, ease of use, and all those little details. So we'll get into that now. In terms of pricing, WordPress is free. You can download it and host it up on a website so long as you have all the hosting capabilities and get going with it really quickly. Shopify has 3 pricing structures ranging from $29 US to about $300 USD. So that's the main difference in pricing. In terms of ease of use, having used both, it's a little bit different for me having used both and having a lot of experience with them, but I'd say Shopify is a lot more first-time friendly. WordPress is a little bit more technical, but it has all those customizable options. So you might have a little bit more of a learning curve using WordPress as opposed to Shopify. Themes are used in both. So when you start hosting a website, you want to have a really swish theme. Shopify has a few free themes that you can use, and I think a couple thousand price themes that you can buy. WordPress, on the other hand, because it's existed for so much longer, I don't even know the number of themes that might exist for it, because people have developed them. Because the platform's open source, people have developed their own themes and built them out, and you can customize those a lot as well. Plugins and extensions is the same case. Shopify has capabilities for installing plugins for whatever features you want to customize your website with. Probably a couple thousand on there that work really well. WordPress, on the other hand, again, it's more of a count list. I've read that probably around 50,000 plugins exist for WordPress. Again, because the development of them has been a lot longer and there's a lot more people using that platform for a longer space of time. E-commerce features, well, Shopify's built for e-commerce, so it has all those built-in features. WordPress, you do have to install WooCommerce to get e-commerce capabilities through that website. Customer support, Shopify has a more developed customer support service, especially if you're on Shopify Plus. WordPress There's no live chat, there's no phone call, there's no one you can really call about WordPress, so you really have to do your own research and find people online to get a lot more information how to customize your website or if you're experiencing issues. But I will say there's a lot more support in terms of when I've asked a question online or looked for through forums, because again, WordPress has existed for so much longer. There's a lot more people who've experienced perhaps the same issues you're experiencing in your website. So there's always that avenue. So even reflecting back on those main differences, you kind of get the sense that if you're jumping on WordPress and you want to develop out a really extensive website, WordPress does have a lot more of the a lot more of the nerds out there who have experienced a lot more of it over time. So you can find some really cool stuff you can implement. Shopify, it's a lot more plug and play, like I've said before. So you can jump in really easily and there's a lot more support around it that's a lot more fresh and direct in terms of getting people on the platform. It's how they've structured out these different products essentially. So the big question, which one is better? And if people for a long time have been asking me this question, and again, being a really annoying SEO specialist, I really say it depends. Like I've said before, e-commerce, Shopify makes sense. WordPress, a lot more customizable. But I will say in terms of what's better for each, Shopify has got a lot more of its capabilities for e-com, but WordPress has a lot more flexibility in terms of if you want to host a content hub. It's just a matter of differences between each one of those platforms or what you use it for. That's what I really flick back in terms of that question. What are you going to be using this platform for? Is it more for content or more for selling products? And that can glean through some of the ways that you can, essentially pick which platform to use. Personal differences between, actually from my personal experience and what actually is better for SEO, I've seen websites rank well that have been both platforms. So essentially, neither one is better than the other in terms of pure performance. Is just essentially what you use it for and what you use it with. So clients that I've worked with before have praised when they've moved from WordPress to Shopify if they're hosting e-commerce. I literally got an email the other day of someone saying it's been the best decision I ever made. Now, if you were to choose a platform initially start out with, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start out with one and you're never going to be able to use the other. It just depends on, if you're doing a website upgrade, you could move platforms from one to the other. So what I'm saying there is essentially, don't feel like this choice between one or the other is going to be the be all and end all. If you're really keen about your business and you're really, excited about your business for the long term, you'll find an opportunity to switch platforms at some stage. So do remember that. And essentially for me, having a hands-on approach for a long period of time, a couple of years using both platforms, you get used to the platform you're using as well, especially if you're running an SEO project. Essentially what you're using in terms of the back end, if you've got a good sense of how to navigate through these platforms, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that one's better than the other. It's just essentially the capabilities of yourself and also who's working on your website to really get the most performance from a search perspective. So in summary, to really keep the choice simple, if people were really going to put a gun to my head and said, which is better for SEO, I would split that question to two things. If you're doing e-commerce, choose Shopify. It's scalable, it works, a lot of big brands use it, and you can definitely have a lot more flexibility in terms of the long term in building out a really large e-commerce store. If you're doing more of a personal project, hosting a blog, writing up content, a publication sort, use WordPress. You have a lot more customizable options, and looking at that Vogue website, you can get a really, really clean setup on WordPress if you're using it in the right way. So that's my summary of Shopify versus WordPress.